Okay, everyone. This is
Hey.
This is Ben Cominos from WHBY in Appleton, and this is Kirk Bankstead from the Minocqua Brewing Company Times. This is called Office Hours with Ben Cominos, and I try to do this once a week with either Ben or Patty, who write for us brilliantly every week, and we do a deeper dive into what they're saying for our subscribers. This goes out to everybody right now, but we send it to our subscribers so they can listen to it later in the podcast form. So, Ben, thanks for joining us again, my friend.
Of course, looked forward to it. Well, given the subject matter, not so much, but always enjoy chatting with you, Kirk.
All right. So your essay today was, started with the crazy Trump Easter post, which was only made worse by, I think, the post this morning. But it kind of went into kind of what that really means and kind of break down the crazy in terms of a strategy. But let's just back up before we even talk about defense spending and what the Democratic message should be. I mean, this stuff is absolutely like end of times crazy, appalling, right? That he's putting out.
Well, that's an interesting choice of words that you just picked right there, because there's definitely an element of what's referred to as Christian Zionism within the Trump administration. There are people, Pete Hegseth included, and as well as a number of nameless generals that you and I, most people listening in this chat right now, are probably not familiar with, that believe in order for their savior to come back, there needs to be mass violence in the Middle East. And there is absolutely a belief of that. And I was 13 when 9/11 happened. And I remember being told there's these religious zealots who think the 72 virgins are waiting for them in the afterlife because they killed the infidels and did 9/11. And we have to condemn that attitude as they're sitting here saying, yeah, there's going to be a ton of Muslims and Jews that are going to need to get massacred in the name of bringing our Lord and Savior back to earth here. I'm not judging anybody's religion or what they want to believe in, but if you need to call for violence for your end days, for your religion to work, you're bad at religion. And I'd argue that's what this administration is struggling with right now.
And just to remind everybody, I mean, Ben, you and I, keep up with the tweets and the news every day, but I don't have it up with me right now. But Trump tweeted on Easter that he was going to blow Iran to smithereens. It implied war crimes, and then he tweeted this morning that that he was just going to end their civilization, as they know it, which implied massive war crimes that are against everything that we've kind of tried to set up as a civilized society since World War II. So it's stuff that the entire blogosphere or whatever the heck we're doing right now, all the other talking heads in the country on the progressive side are saying those posts from Trump constitute an immediate removal of office. If the Republicans Congress had any spine and were not complicit, they would do something. Something should be done. The global stage knows it. They know that he's lost his mind, and once again, we probably won't get anything. Won't come of this. It'll just be another statement that he made.
Yeah, it almost certainly will, and it'll float by the wayside. I had one listener hit me up on Facebook saying along the lines of what you were saying there, Kirk, and I don't want to take credit for what he said here because I can kind of get on board with this idea. I'm going to read it right off my page here. I think if there's a possibility of war crimes prosecution, I think it would carry more weight if every Republican congressman were to be automatically included for their complicity. It is not just the president alone responsible for this disastrous crime against an entire nation. I'm just going to be honest with you here. He goes on from there. First of all, I think we're going to need a commitment from a lot of the sitting Dems and leadership that they are, in fact, opposed to what's happening right now. And I think the vote has to happen on the record. And then assuming all the Democrats go the way that 96% of the base wants to see them go, then all of a sudden it's going to be a matter of where the conservatives go. Marjorie Taylor Greene tweeted moments before you and I went live that Trump needs to be removed. Iran hasn't bombed us. This is evil. Her words, not mine.
Yeah.
in regards to what Donald Trump is threatening right now. 76% of Texas bleeping Democrats are referring to what Israel is doing as a genocide right now. What do you think they're going to react to? What is, by all accounts, the definition of a genocide, were Donald Trump to actually enact what he is saying is going to happen here? Um, I think everybody's got to get on the right side of history and has to do it quick. And not only should Trump face ramifications for what, God willing, isn't going to happen. I think there should be a lot of people for the Lindsey Grahams and Ted Cruzes that gin up our grandparents into supporting whatever the hell we're watching. I had a guy call my show yesterday, Kirk, who says, uh, oh, so what are we supposed to do the next time Iran wants to commandeer a public vehicle and run it into a building? And I said, are you talking about 9/11? He's like, yeah. I was like, that was Saudi Arabia. It wasn't even Iran. I said, you're mixing up your Muslims. Like they're so turned around right now that they're just describing like, oh, what about fill in the blank here? What about when they deflated all the footballs for Tom Brady? It's like, well, no, that had nothing to do with Iran. Like, why are we talking about this right now? I think we got to see the penalties obviously applied to the sitting presidents, but there's a lot of players that make this happen, and I think they need to either come out and condemn what's happening,
Yeah.
or face the same potential penalties that come with this year. I
And
just hope
let's
we don't see death on the way there. Go ahead, sorry.
and let's remind all the listeners, to remove the president for saying these appalling things that should require any president to be removed because he's absolutely lost his mind by now. You have to have the 25th Amendment says that like the cabinet of our cabinet has to like enough of our cabinet or majority of our cabinet has to invoke the 25th Amendment plus our vice president. Uh, and then that has to be passed by a majority in Congress. So we have not seen this. I mean, we'd have to have Republicans who grow spines who have been complicit, in this authoritarian regime. You'd have to have J.D. Vance grow a spine. Yeah, you'd have to have John Thune. These it's not going to happen. We're not
Well,
going to
cool.
see anything happen from this
I agree.
because these guys have not shown any ability to stand up to Trump, in over his administration. So nothing's going to happen. We're still going to have to fight. But let's talk about your essay today. Let's get deeper into it. So, um, you know, this whole kind of focus on give us the background of why Trump's asking. He's being belligerent, and coupled with his asking for like $500 billion for the military. That harkens us back to the two ways that the world went. Uh, they either went towards FDR back in the day, or they went towards Germany and fascism. When oligarchs screwed up the economy, which is what's happening right now, there's two paths that we took, and you really explained it well in your essay today. Let's hear it.
Yeah, like the parallels are uncanny, even all the way to the pandemic that broke out in 1920 versus the pandemic that broke out in 2020, which I didn't even get into with the Spanish flu. But the fact is, the Gilded Age of the late 1800s, early 1900s, which we are experiencing worse wealth inequality today, but that's another conversation entirely, essentially led us to the Great Depression. We did the ultimate version of trickle-down economics, essentially knocking their taxes down to zero under the promise that it would trickle down onto us. It obviously didn't. The Great Depression happened. We as Americans always view economic things like this through our own lens, not realizing that the entire world feels it, and they did. There was widespread poverty everywhere. No one knew how we were going to get out of it. Two separate chains of thought emerged. And you even notice the parallels, and I'll kind of point out to them as they go. But America, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who did internment camps, I am not deifying the man. He's got plenty of issues. But economically, he saved this country and built the strongest middle class in human history for 40 years based on what he proposed. He said, we're taxing the crap out of these guys, and we're going to build these social programs, whether it's Social Security, whether it's developing infrastructure, whether it's building homes and cities. Lyndon B. Johnson even built off of this. He did Medicare, Medicaid, builds all these social programs that I'd like to point out didn't add a bleeping cent to the debt. The only time we ever had time to the debt is war and tax cuts for wealthy people. Germany, Italy, and the other states that we now know as the Axis, the fascist states, they all went the way that mirrors what Donald Trump is doing. And this is the downside to freaking out every time Trump does anything, is when he is actively mirroring fascist governments, it makes it easier for people to ignore it. In Germany, they were told, we're cutting taxes for the wealthy people. The reason the economy sucks isn't because of the oligarchs, but it's because the Jews are here, which is the Mexicans of today. You see the parallels one to one happening here. And when you don't see government work, when you feel yourself struggling and there's an easy scapegoat that feels attainable, i.e., the Jewish people in Germany, the Mexican people, and the immigrants here in America, that's where people gravitate towards. The whole thing is repeating itself, and you can draw a line in the sand. Very rarely, historically, is there such a one-to-one comparison. The countries that did FDR stuff was like, hey, this democracy thing's pretty all right. And the people who did the Nazi stuff are the people who are like, you know what? I blame this entire population and nobody else. The parallels are there. And what sucks is it's part of that war on education, right? Like you have to know that this happened, but once you know that it happened, it's pretty difficult to ignore the obvious parallels.
Yeah. So so scapegoating the minorities among us is one way, but they also, there's a nationalistic part of this, right? You have to say, okay, we need to get into a war so that we can rally our brethren, even though they can't afford groceries.
Right.
As long as we're at war with another country, then they'll, then okay, it's okay to have to tighten our belt because now we have to spend all this money on arms as opposed to spend all this money on domestic programs that help a terrible economy out. So they're relying on a nationalistic fervor as well, right?
What makes me sad about that, yes, to answer your question, and what makes me sad about that is I understand how that would work in the 1930s and 40s. We didn't have the internet. Like if something happened in Germany, you had to wait for a newspaper to be printed, and then you don't even know if the information's right or wrong. Like for all we know, they're doing witchcraft in Germany. We wouldn't know any better. Like there was a
You
sense
can
of
really demonize
yeah.
Germany if you can't hear anything back from them.
That's what I'm saying. Like, we're in an era now where I realize there's a ton of shortcomings with the internet, but like, I can watch what the people in Iran are doing. I can watch what the people in the Middle East are doing. And like, yeah, the social issues, their attitudes towards the gay population, the way they treat women, plenty left to be desired. Also, none of our business how they're handling things here. And the overarching message of it that there's some kind of threat that they hate us, it shouldn't be as sellable. And the people who are being sold on it are the people that really don't use the internet or that are a little bit older and maybe use the internet in the wrong way. The way that they fell for the Russian memes about Hillary in 2016, that as I say on my show, my 14-year-old cousin wasn't falling for those memes, but my 65-year-old grandparents were because
Yeah.
they're not as adept on the internet as some of the young people were, especially in that era. And it shouldn't be. I think that's the most frustrating part about that element of the playbook is if aliens invaded, I'd be like, yeah, we don't know what these guys are about. We gotta band together. Like there's no country, whether it's Russia, China, North Korea, like they're just people. Like we gotta like that's I think a very progressive attitude, but like they're trying to accomplish the same things. Their government sucks too. They have information that's propagandizing them as well. They might hate us, but I can almost guarantee you, learn about what we did to North Korea and then question like, oh, okay, like I understand why why they might have an issue with our government, not necessarily you or I, and
Yeah,
then
yeah.
how that's used to gin us up. And it requires ignorance that I guess I'm sad is still so pervasive in society today with such a prevalence of information.
Yeah. Now, you obviously said it in your essay though, like because it's pretty easy for anybody, with half a brain to go and see that, that to listen to a few talking heads other than Fox News and say, "Oh, why are we in Iran?" You can even go listen to the Infowars guy, and he's saying Trump should be removed. That guy's bat shit. What's his name?
Yeah.
Alex Jones. I mean, so it's like you can't be MAGA right now and not hear a differing opinion, even on that side about why the heck are we yeah, why the heck are we doing anything in Iran? And so you mentioned in your article, this strategy. Who knows if Trump is even able to have any strategies anymore? But
Yeah.
whatever is coming out of his mouth, it is an intentional strategy that will fail, right? Why it's
Yeah.
gonna fail? Because people are, they know better. The war is unpopular. The economy. Oh, and you mentioned what, like Billy Bob, you know, he might not care about the girls in Iran being bombed, but he does care about his groceries or his gas bill going up $13 an hour.
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly it. That's like the common turn of phrase on social media right now. They'll say, "I can't believe this is what it took for you to finally realize how awful he was, an extra 13 bucks a week." Obviously, there's a lot more costs that are associated. I simplified it for, dramatic effects, but the principle still holds true when I say those kind of things there, because the fact is there's people that interact with the show, specifically ones that serve, which always have more of an insight. The comparison I make, I never played football. I can sit there and break down the difference between a 4-3 defense and a 3-4 defense in a pretty in-depth manner. Like, I understand because I'm not a moron. I can watch the game and understand it, but I'll never be able to tell you what it's like in a locker room. I won't be able to tell you what it's like to feel as a grown man be motivated by what another grown man has to say in that regard. And I say it's the same thing with armed conflict. I know I understand 85% of what's going on. I understand we have no business engaging in this kind of war, but I don't know what goes on in a barracks. I don't know what people are talking about. I don't know how they feel about the people that are in Iran, how they about the civilians in Iran. I have vets that will interact with the show that will tell you right now, this is not what we voted for. As people that voted for Trump, we were told no new wars. And I even
Yeah.
concede multiple times. I do believe the war in Iran was inevitable. I think there'd be less threats of war crimes, but I think either political party, this was inevitably coming this way. But there are people angry with it, and I think that's why he's doubling down on the jingoism, the extreme patriotism, questioning, do you love America? And really forcing you to say, this isn't our fight, because the mob mentality is real, and it impacts people, especially as we all know, and coming from me, I think it carries more weight. MAGA is a cult. It is obviously a cult, and I give them the benefit of the doubt all the time, and they are banking on the extreme patriotism and your friends at the bar kind of haranguing you. I had one guy call me and he says, "We have to finish the job." Those aren't hers words. Those are the words of the fake parents of one of the deceased soldiers that Trump made up. And you got this guy like, we got to finish the job. I'm like,
Yeah.
where was finish the job for an entire year and a half of the election season? Why did I not hear finish the job one time? I heard no new wars. And now I'm hearing finish the job. Is there
Yeah.
no wake up to Jesus moment here that you're having where it's like, I might be getting had. You don't realize, like, you doing this platform, me hosting outside the box. Like, I have my own catchphrases. I talk about, Republicans run on something, something trans. And people have never met me will be like, something, something trans, because I say it. Trump has that same impact on people and a
Yeah.
whole hell of a lot more than you and I could ever hope to have, which is scary. It's just a matter of us reaching the people that are reachable. And I'd argue within MAGA, that's close to half of them when you break it down.
So so you just talked about the somehow, Trump or his or Miller is trying to formulate a, a winning election strategy for 2026, which is at this point, seems absolutely impossible. There is no election strategy that could come out of Trump or Trump's regime that could be winning if it doesn't involve massively suppressing the vote or canceling elections altogether. I think that's clear. However, the only strategy that you can have at this point is to get us so deep into a war and have so many casualties, American soldiers, having video of them being brutally hurt or wounded or killed, that you rally that sentiment of Americans having to back Americans, through patriotism, because we're deeper, and we have to now avenge our honor because we've lost so many men. This is the same thing that kept the Vietnam War going for so long. It's like we should have never been there, but now that we're there and now you've lost somebody, you're like, okay, we're gonna beat those. We're gonna beat them up bad. You know?
Oh, absolutely. This will probably get you on a list for me bringing it up, but like right after 9/11 happened, Osama bin Laden wrote a letter and said for a decade and a half, you guys killed 1.5 million of my Muslim brothers and sisters, and the world didn't say anything. And then they did 9/11, and the whole world stands up and is like, we will bomb you for the next 20 years. And I always add that caveat. I understand with the benefit of hindsight what a waste of time the war on terror was. In the moment, right after that happened, if I were in my 20s and that happened, yeah, of course I would have been rah, rah, America, go get them. But as I often state on the show, we're supposed to learn. We're supposed to grow. We're supposed to evolve. What worked in 2001 shouldn't work in
Yeah.
2026. And fundamentally, God forbid there were an attack on American soil. I'm here to tell you right now, I still wouldn't change my tune about what's happening right now.
Yeah.
I would be saying this is brought about because we literally threatened the extermination of an entire population, and
Yeah.
we have the means to do it. What would you do in that scenario? And that's not especially in Republican circles, that's not a popular thing to say, but it's a realistic thing to say. And if you're not willing to look at life through that lens, you're not being honest with yourself here. So I'm nervous whether it's an actual attack or, some kind of false flag BS. Were something to happen on American soil, I think we'd be set up for a long haul here that I want no parts
Yeah.
of.
Yeah. So, okay. So you mentioned a couple things. When 9/11 was hit, I was my second year of employment. I was like 22 years old.
Mhm.
I called the Army officers training camp. I filled out the paperwork to go to officer training school. My best friend from college started training in his pool in Nacogdoches, Texas, and became a Navy SEAL officer off of 9/11. So it's
Right.
m- like men in their 20s, you know, I was totally hook, line, and sinker. I wanted to beat the shit
Yeah.
out of out of
Yeah.
Saddam Hussein when I was,
100%.
at that point, and that could happen. It's a false flag when you say that. It I think we should explain it. It's possible, and I wouldn't put it past the Trump regime in order to change the entire narrative before the election in 26 is to actually have fake fake Muslims or fake Iranians do something like run into a World Trade Center tower and something hugely emblematic that kills a lot of Americans, and then to say, okay, now we can't change horses midstream. Trump is our guy. The military, we have to stick with our military. We have to bomb the crap out of Iran. And by the way, we're going to suspend elections because it's too dangerous. If we don't know we don't know who's a spy or who's not in this regime, we have to lock everything down, and we can't have elections while we're going through this war.
Yeah, and, like, I don't wanna spread fear or panic, but, like, this is just the paths that my mind goes when I'm prepping the show all the time here, but, like, I say it all the time in regards to crime. Like, there's a Republican narrative that the blacks are doing all the crime and blah, blah, blah. In a country of 370 million people, I can find you a black guy doing a crime in one of the states. Every single day, I can find you one of those things. There's 1.5 billion Muslims on the planet. I gotta find you 3 that are willing to do something, and it doesn't even have to be overtly violent. Like, again, I think about this crap too much, but, like, our electrical grid is completely unguarded. You could go drop a thing there, throw an entire half of the country into a blackout, and everyone be like, "What are they doing to us?" And that in and of itself, once you get people panicked and nervous, now you have an entirely different conversation. Like, I'm not even implying it has to be like a 9/11 or some kind of drive a loaded vehicle into a situation. It could be something as
Yeah,
milquetoast as messing with our electricity for a couple days or something like that, as we bomb the crap out of their entire energy grid and act like that's just
yeah,
patriotism or whatever it is.
yeah,
It's uncanny how much this impact like how precarious this is, and we have a guy that I don't know what the opposite of precarious is, but that's the guy in charge of what's happening right now, which is kind
yeah.
of jarring.
No, I mean, so many things could plunge us into darkness at the moment, and it is complete chaos. Hegseth is firing generals who are the ones who are wise, so that he could, make sure that the generals that he has will be pliable and not listen to their oath. Um, so we got 5 minutes left here. What do we we have a big election happening in Wisconsin today. Electoral politics and what we need to focus on, what Democratic politicians need to focus on. Let's talk about funding first as opposed to funding war. What should we be focused on funding? And then let's talk about the election in Wisconsin.
Yeah, and I think they need to be very vocal about this because realistically, and I don't have the number in front of me, but off the top of my head, I believe when Biden left office, the defense budget was at 780 billion. If I think that's correct. It might have been 860 now that I think about it, but let's just screw it. Let's just assume 780. It's somewhere in that range. In 1 year, Trump knocked it up to a trillion. Now he's offering 1.5 trillion for defense. That is close to a two times of the original budget. 750 times 2 would put us at 1.5 trillion. Meanwhile, we are cutting SNAP benefits. We will not have any kind of talks about Medicare for all, nothing about a national housing plan. As I mentioned, to push back against fascism, FDR and the government quite literally built not only homes, entire towns, the infrastructure, parks for your kids to play at, and they sold the homes at cost. And those homes are now worth $1.6 million. And the people who were given those homes think they're some kind of fantastical business people. It's very, it should be very easy to be against the conflict in the Middle East. What the Democratic Party needs to focus on is showing you, okay, all you're hearing about, and you're even seeing it today. I call him Ron the Swamp Johnson right now, is talking about, oh, we got to be more fiscally responsible while he's voting for the trickle down bill for the eighth time, while he's voting to increase our defense spending. We don't have to be fiscally responsible. There's one guy that I can see that is trying to be fiscally responsible. Hammer the message. Social programs don't add to the debt. Every Democrat since Reagan has reduced the deficit, not brought it positive, not all of them, but has always reduced the deficit. Every Republican has increased it, and the way they're increasing it has never benefited you in a material way. Hit that message and hit it often. Don't dance in the cultural. Don't dance anywhere else other than the economic and, of course, the anti-war element. Finally, all of Democrats are on the same page again on that front. And I'm telling you right now, at the very least, there's an independent contingency that might have a couple hesitancies about transgender women playing in women's sports, but I promise you won't care if you are running full-throatedly on,
Yeah.
yeah, this bullshit is done. And I think that's the most obvious common sense way forward for anyone that means business. Ro Khanna comes to mind as someone who's been very outspoken about that since the beginning, but more of them got to jump on board.
Absolutely. There are still too many Democrats who are wishy-washy, even about funding the military right now and actually funding those additional expenses, for military, which means, which means they're bought and sold by lobbyists for.
And Kirk, I'd even take it a step further. And for the record, I am not a defund the police progressive. The fact of the matter is, when defund the police was getting chanted, that's when Joe Biden won the election in 2020. He proceeded to fund the police all 4 years, increase ICE funding all 4 years, and increase the military budget all 4 years. And now we have Trump again. There is an element of embrace what people are telling you what they want, not defunding, not because I think that's stupid messaging, but the principles still hold pat. And
Yeah.
if we know defense spending and war will happen under Democratic rule as much as Republican, well, I can preach as much as I want, but inevitably right wingers be like, well, Ben, but what about? And I'm like, you're right. You're right. I've got no comeback to what you're telling me right now.
Well,
And
that's why
so,
that's why the progressive wing in our party has. That's what we're doing. We don't have the money, but we have the voice and we have the reach, and
yeah.
that's why we're doing what we're doing. Now, talking about voice and reach, we have an election happening today in Wisconsin. Uh, it's for local judges. It's for county board chairman, town board chairman. Let me tell you, everyone, coming from Oneida County, Wisconsin, if you elect the wrong circuit court judge, you elect the wrong county board chairman, they can hurt you. And it's
Oh, sure.
very important to get out and vote today. Obviously, it's really important to vote for Chris Taylor, who's running for Supreme Court. It will give us a 5-2, the liberal court, a 5-2 majority. It's not about drumming up our majority, but it's about keeping a MAGA bootlicker off of our Supreme Court. You want to talk about that, Ben?
Yeah, myvote.wisconsin.gov, myvote.wi.gov. It'll give you everybody. If you punch your zip code in, it gives you everybody on there. Because keep in mind, Chris Taylor and Maria Lazar are getting all of the publicity by and large, but there's school board elections that are going on where you want to talk about if there's one place you don't want MAGA that's going to impact you every single day, it's where your kids are going to school. We've got our friend John Shelton running in Green Bay for a city district, I believe. There's a lot of these local positions. All politics are local is the line. Local politics are obviously local, and it's important you go in there, and there's no guarantee that depending on the race you're talking about that you're going to see the D or the R. So myvote.wi.gov. Look right now at who's on there. Then go do your research and find out who conforms to whatever it is that you believe and want to see happen. That would be my best advice to you heading out there today.
And obviously, you want your city clerks to be honest. They're the ones that run the
Right.
votes,
Right.
run the elections, you know?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I'll be honest, man. I think a lot of people are going to take their foot off the gas. I don't want to jinx it, but I think Chris Taylor's going to. I think it's going to be even larger than the Susan Crawford margin here. And I think there's a lot of people taking their foot off the gas, and there's going to be a lot of local races that you're going to regret not getting out there to vote. Even local referendums. We're talking about,
Yeah.
and just in my neck of the woods, Appleton and Menasha both have referendums about increasing funding because the state won't do it. It's either your school systems are gonna be broke or you get out there and you vote yes on these things, so get out there.
All right. Thanks so much, Ben. As always, I appreciate our time together. I wish we could do it more often, but I got beer to sell. So,
I feel that. If I may, shameless plug, I do have a YouTube channel now at Ben Cominos. Please go check it out. I'm trying to start an independent thing in case, as you know, your voice can kind of disappear here. So, check me out at Ben Cominos. Subscribe, please. But this was great, Kirk. Thank you.
thanks a lot, Ben. Take care, man.
Yeah, take it easy.